Liberals accept responsibility for what they can control and cancel their policies that make life more expensive for Canadians.
That's why we're fast-tracking projects like the Sunrise expansion. That's why the TMX optimization is moving forward. Mr. Speaker, we are helping solve the world's affordability problem.
We cannot control what happens in other countries, but we can absolutely control whether or not to drive prices higher with tax increases. Why not at least give Canadians a break from Liberal taxes?
Beyond the G7 Finance Minister call, we're coordinating our action. We're going to take action together to make sure that we can bring energy to the well, Mr. Speaker.
Opposition parties are demanding clarity from Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal government on its position when it comes to the conflict in the Middle East. MPs are just over an hour away from a debate in the House of Commons on the war, a debate convened by the government's House Leader. Prime Minister Mark Carney initially voiced support for the U.S.-Israel strikes on Iran, later insisting he took that position with regret and that the airstrikes likely violated international law. Last week, Carney also didn't categorically rule out, quote-unquote, involvement in the war, but various ministers have since insisted there are no plans for Canada to participate. Let's bring in our front bench to look ahead to that debate. With me this evening, former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant. He's now the CEO of Space Canada. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt is with us. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair is with us, as is the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. We're a few minutes away as well from Donald Trump giving a press conference. First time we've heard from him kind of during a longer period since the Supreme Leader's son took over yesterday. Tom, the criticism now that the government is getting from both Conservatives in the NDP and the Bloc, actually, it's kind of rare that they're getting criticism from everyone all at once, is about these different positions that the opposition parties say are incongruent coming from the government. Is the criticism warranted from where you sit?
It's sharper than it should be because, of course, it was an evolving situation, but everything's fair in war and opposition. They're just taking the different parts of what happened last week, the really full-throated support that Carney expressed as soon as the attacks on Iran started. He realized he had left himself no wiggle room, started backing away, talking about doing it with regret and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, if you go through it and parse it literally, then there are changes of position. But I don't think that there are a lot of people in Canada who adopt the NDP's position that we heard today, which is, oh, no, this is against the United Nations, and maybe we should have just let Iran develop the nuclear weapons. I added that last part, but it's pretty well implicit in what they were saying. Yeah. So it is tough. I mean, we were listening to Melissa Lantsman before, so it's going to be a bit of a kitchen sink debate tonight. Everything's going to be thrown in there. There's going to be some very ripe, low-hanging fruit about gas prices. Who knew? People care about that. So the minute, gas is heading for $2 a gallon. Sorry, $2 a liter. If a gallon wouldn't have been that bad. $2 a liter. So that's going to be really affecting pocketbook issues, and that's the purview of the Conservatives. They own that file. The Bloc will be in there to the extent that it can. The NDP will try, but I think that overall it's going to be a fight. It's a loud, vociferous battle over some of these issues that the Conservatives have been talking about, and they're going to go hard on Carney because it's one of the rare times that he has exposed himself a little bit. There has been a bit of a chink in his armor in terms of the consistency of the messaging.
Do you think the Prime Minister is vulnerable to that criticism, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's vulnerable. I agree with Tom. I'll even go maybe a little sharper than Tom on that. I mean, look, I think he went out with a statement that was pretty concise, pretty direct. We spoke about it last week in the sense that we were not to speak for my colleagues, but I think overall we were a bit surprised on how very clear the position was. Then after that, basically saying, I took that position with regret. Essentially, anybody please correct me if I'm wrong. I think the way in which he presented that was, this is an example of the breaking down of the world order. So it's with a lot of regret. So to Tom's point, I agree. It's kind of to soften a little bit the very concise and clear position he had taken early on. And then the idea of getting involved, can't speak to necessarily what the thinking is there, but at the same time, I can certainly acknowledge that you may want to say to yourself, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how this is going to evolve. We don't know where this is going to be. Iran certainly has the strategy of trying to bring as many people into this war as possible. So certainly that makes things pretty unstable. So that might be why he's saying it. So I'm not sure I would necessarily classify that as a change of position. And then saying that essentially, yeah, it certainly didn't follow the international process it's supposed to. I think that was the understatement of the week. I mean, I think we all recognize that. So the position that they originally taken was with that embedded in it already. So I'm not sure I'd say it's a change of position. Now, that said, to Tom's point, I think, and to your question, Bash, I think they definitely can be criticized on their position and essentially the way that it's evolved in terms of adding and graphing sort of qualifications. And I think a debate makes a lot of sense for the MPs to have in Ottawa over the next little while.
Does it matter, Lisa, that the Prime Minister won't be at that debate? He did yesterday before the debate was called. There was an itinerary release. He does have an event tonight, and his office said there's no precedent for the Prime Minister to be there and that the Foreign Affairs Minister will basically lay out the government's position. And I think they said something to the effect of that's more than adequate. Is it from a political perspective?
Tonight, because I had
have your
heard
audio.
that the Prime Minister...
There we are. Now we do. Sorry. Do you mind starting again? My apologies. We didn't hear you right after that.
No worries. No worries. I was going to ask you who was going to lead off the government debate tonight, because I had heard that the Prime Minister wasn't going to be there for it. Political or not, the reality is that this is the opportunity for the House of Parliament to actually weigh in on what's happening. There'll be a lot of things that'll be brought up in this debate, as Tom and Brian have both pointed out, not least of which is what's happening there, but specifically the impacts on Canadians. One of the impacts, of course, is what we're seeing in terms of gasoline prices. The other very real impact, Vashi, is what's happening in some of our cities and what's happening to some of our citizens disappearing, presumed to be murdered, as well as shots being fired in synagogues in Toronto. Those are real issues that have a real impact in our country. I think the Prime Minister should be there. He's made the choice not to be there. I don't know whether or not it sticks to him politically, but I got to say I'm a little bit disappointed, because I do think that the impact of the war on Canada deserves to have prime ministerial force within the House of Commons.
Do you think it matters, Benzie?
Yeah, Lisa's right, Vashi. I mean, when I was a young reporter, I remember being on the Hill for, I think it was in 91, must have been 1991, the first Gulf War, and Brian Mulroney was the Prime Minister, and there was a debate on Canada's involvement, and it was not that Canada, it was a different situation in the sense that Canada was more of a willing participant in 1991 than we would be in this case. But I think given the Prime Minister's I would say shifting positions or narrowly evolving positions. I think he should be there. I understand why he's not, though. It probably is not because of the fact that his positions have been evolving. Now, in fairness to him, the positions of President Trump have also been evolving. And on any given day, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, and the President himself have different positions. So the Americans haven't been clear. I'm looking forward to seeing the president's press conference later on in this hour, Vashi, so that we can perhaps get some clarity, because I don't know if we can expect the Canadian Prime Minister to be clear on Canada's position when Canada itself doesn't know, or the world itself doesn't know what the United States' position is on all of this and where this ends, because this is not regime change. It's not. It just isn't.
Well, clearly, not with the Sun taking over. It's not regime change right now, that's for sure. And to Benzie's point, Tom, I mean, we're supposed to hear from the President of the United States. It's supposed to be in 5 minutes, but he's still talking at the podium right now in his address to Republicans, so I will never guarantee something like that. But he told CBS a few hours ago, like he's calling all these reporters, right? He told CBS a few hours ago, Tom, that the war is complete, pretty much. Last night, to Benzie's point, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, was on 60 Minutes saying this thing is in the very early stages. There is really no clarity from the U.S.
What a great pick to illustrate the point about Carney's own reactions, right? And on the plane, on Air Force One, yes, over the weekend, we had a very clear question to President Trump. Wasn't the United States involved in the bombing of that school? Trump, with his typical look, says, no, I think that was probably Iran. Hegseth was right behind him, and the journalist managed to get a question straight to Hegseth, whose eyes rolled, saying, what do? Do I contradict the boss, or do I try to use one of my lines? He chose to use one of his lines, which is, we're studying it, we're looking at it. No question whatsoever of trying to pin this on Iran. So this is pure Trump. I mean, this thing's almost over. Really, there might be a little bit of exaggeration in that, because there's a country of 90 million people with a deeply embedded military, and just the Revolutionary Guard Corps is very much still alive. They're still well equipped, and this thing is anything but over. And if anybody thought that, Trump, the weekend that it launched, he said, well, I've done this, and I'm going to decapitate. The rest is up to you, saying to the people who had been in the streets, well, go get shot at again by the Revolutionary Guard, because we're not going to do anything beyond that. Now it's up to you. That's the Pontius Pilate approach that Trump takes to these things. He's done his bit. The rest is up to you. He wanted to go after them. He said that it was about the nuclear program. He said it was over. Last year, he boasted that it was done. Then all of a sudden, it's not quite done. We've still got to go after that. So we never know with Trump. There's so much malarkey involved in his statements. And yeah, the average person in the public is hard-pressed to understand what the end game is, because I certainly don't know. And I can't tell from any of the contradictory statements coming out of the people who are primarily involved.
I have just 30 seconds left, Brian. Last word to you. Does that, as Tom sort of alluded to, kind of explain all the evolution of Carney's position, or should it have been taken into account prior to asserting the initial position by the Prime Minister?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that that also could play a role in the Prime Minister's position, maybe trying to keep it very concise at the beginning, as we saw, and then trying to qualify a little bit, as I already mentioned and others have commented on. So I think that's totally fair for the Prime Minister to have. And I also would add Iran's actions are pretty erratic as well. And as already mentioned, they're trying to goad other countries to get involved, and that certainly makes everything a little more uncertain as well.